Hello, hi friends. Just making sure I'm unmuted so you can hear me, you can see me, everything's good. Hello, happy Monday. I hope you had a good weekend, friends. I hope that wherever you are, the weather's okay and that you're having a good start to the week. Hi, Mark. How's it going? Super Planner Girl. Hi. Spicy miso. uh, I was gonna say not spicy, not spamming the chat with a bunch of. But yay! I'm so glad you're all here. I'm so glad to see you, ish, virtually in chat. Okay, let's hydrate. How am I doing? I'm good. I'm good. How are you, Spicy? Um, I'm good because a lot of things, but also because we had our first sort of sunny weekend here in the Vancouver area in a while. It's been so rainy and gloomy and just all of the things, cloudy, and the things that come with like just being down about the weather. So we had our first sunny weekend, still cold because it's winter, but it just means that we can go out dressed warm and stuff, and yeah, and just being outdoors is really nice. So yeah, I am good. I got my vitamin D going on. You're doing some admin stuff and you hate it. Yeah, I know, admin. The things that you need to do, I always kind of think like adulting is hard sometimes, and it's not fun. It's like boring stuff and things that need to get done, but you don't always want to do it. So that's why you're in stream, because we're going to have some fun with journaling and planning today. And I'll go into details as I get into it, but if you're new here or you're joining for the first time, I'm Corolla. Hi. On socials, you can find me at From Corolla. And I love all things stationery, especially love fountain pens, fountain pen inks, and I do a lot of abstract floral art, painting, drawing, coloring, that kind of stuff. But I come from a stationery, sort of scrapbooking, journaling, planning. I've always been into it, so that's kind of my forte. And I got into fountain pens probably in 2020. I kind of dove into the rabbit hole. Before that, I just had a couple of fountain pens and I was happy, and then I found that there was more to it. So in this stream, this year I've been planning on streaming Mondays and Wednesdays. And Mondays, I want to sort of commit to planning and journaling. So I'm working in my planner and just showing you how you can set it up to look, it can be functional, but also if you want to use it in different ways, like for memory keeping, or make it sort of more aesthetic by using your stationery accessories like washi tapes, stickers, markers, and all sorts of stationery supplies. That's what I kind of want to focus on in this stream. And then on Wednesdays, I want to sort of dive into fountain pens, currently inked, that kind of thing. So if you're joining today and you have a planner or journal or something like that, I always kind of think Monday is like the day to sort of set myself up for the week. So if I start the week off with, feeling like I'm set up in my planners and I know what I'm doing for the week, what my priorities are, my schedule, appointments, things like that, then I feel more organized and I feel more sort of calm and at peace that, things will happen as they happen, but at least I'm not in the middle of, personal chaos when it comes to planning. So that's kind of what I want to focus on today. So if you want to plan and journal along with me, feel free to do that. Or if you're lurking because you're at work or doing other things, then that's all good too. And feel free to ask questions or throw things into the chat, because that's what we do here. It's very chill and relaxing, and we talk about stationery and other things, and we just chat. As long as we're kind to each other, it's all good. It's not fun when people you go to are incompetent. Oh no! And waste your time. I know. Sometimes things just take longer than they have to, and I feel it's so unnecessary, right? But I hope you get through it, and I hope it turns out all okay, Spicy. Brooklyn Becca, how's it going? Happy Monday. Carol, happy Monday. I hope you had a good weekend. Yes, planners. Super planner girl. I assume you're into planners. Also, let me know in the chat what you're using this year, since it is past mid-January. So hopefully you've sort of figured out your system and your lineup, at least for, however you want to sort of set up the year, half of a year, whatever. And, I always kind of say, like, choose something that will work for you now, knowing that your situation can change, schedules can change, routines can change. Give yourself some space to adjust if you need to. And it's something I've learned ever since, just knowing that the year sort of changes as it goes. And as a mom, I know that my routine will change based on when my kids are in school, when they're at home, when they have a break, that kind of thing. So knowing that I can adjust my planners and journals and the routine that comes with them based on like what sort of season or what month it is even, has sort of opened up the door for me to experiment more, and also just give myself some space to, like, if I don't need to fill up all of the spaces, all of the books, if I don't have time for it. But that doesn't mean I can't jump back into something that works for, a few months of the year. So I typically regroup with my schedule on Sunday evenings. Yeah, that sounds good, Brooklyn Becca. Currently I'm on the treadmill. You got to stick to your schedule. Stick to your routines. Hobonichi A5 Avec for 6 years. Wow, that's awesome. First time Hobonichi user, Mark. Awesome. I hope you're liking it so far. I hope your books are treating you well. I did my own budget discount planner with stuffs I had around. Yeah, it does the job. You got to use what you have. I'm using the Best Weekly Planner by Spicy Miso. Do I know of this brand? Spicy Miso. Where can I get this? I've tried to change planners, but I'm never very successful. Yeah. Oh, you used Erin Condren. Yeah, it's kind of a jump, I find, if you're sort of in like an Erin Condren or Happy Planner or something like that, and you jump into, Hobonichi or other kind of books. It's an adjustment period for sure. And I will say that last year was probably the first year where I successfully jumped between planners when I had to. And I think the years before, I felt a lot of pressure on myself. I did it to myself. To stick with like one book for planning, or, I have to use these journals every day so that I don't have empty pages where I don't know what happened. And I think last year was the first year where I let that go. I let it go. I was just like, I can't put that kind of pressure on me when things in my life are constantly, evolving. So unless you sort of have process that works for you that you just don't want to change, that's different, and then you can sort of adjust accordingly. But where I was like, I am fine with jumping from an A5 plotter to a traveler's notebook passport size just so I could carry it around with me. I felt like it was a lot easier when I just kind of let go of that pressure on myself and expectation. I'm experimenting this year and already found a gap. That's interesting. Brooklyn Becca, you found a gap, and I'm glad that you're experimenting though. I like when people are kind of experimenting too. I like to kind of see what's working for people and what's not, and how they're kind of adjusting and changing their lineups too. I got caught and oh no, I'm sorry, Mark. I hope you're back. You can't get it. Only I can. Fine, Spicy. You hog it. You keep it to yourself. Maybe one of these years. My brother gave me a Japanese one. Yeah, because it came with a cover he bought. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. I kind of like the Japanese versions of the planners. Except for, I think the week's English has like the extra pages in the back for English. So you have like tracking and like other things in English, which, makes it easier if you're English speaker. But I like the Japanese layout just because it looks like, I'm using a Japanese planner. Though I will say for this year, I'm not using any Hobonichi planners. I used quite a few last year for different purposes like memory keeping, planning, etc. And this year I decided to go with different books and different systems that I found kind of work for me in terms of flexibility. So that's kind of what I'm leaning into this year, is keeping it flexible, keeping it portable so I can have it with me when I need to. And then having sort of places where I can do memory keeping and journaling like I always do. Sans and Tiara is solid in mine. Oh, good. Yeah. That's the kind of, that's the question this year, isn't it? Like, if you're using a Hobonichi, if all of your paper is fine. So I hope there are no inconsistencies. Though I think a few people may have found that already. I hope for the most part, though, it's fine. I didn't know the Emperor's birthday until this year. That's so funny. Yeah, and like the moon phases and things like that, where they just like they might be a little bit off, but it's kind of interesting. Also have to remember to note things like 4th of July. Yeah, definitely adjusting for your specific regional holidays and things like that, right? Where it's like, oh wait, we don't celebrate this, whatever the holiday is. I'm using airfoil papers for my own planner. You get instant gratification looking at how the inks come up, but using the paper is annoying and frustrating. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard much about that paper. I have some. I picked some up for my ring planner last year at the SF Pen Show, I think. And I've kind of used it off and on, but not in like a daily sort of use way. So, but I think I know what you mean in terms of like the way that it's different from maybe if you're used to like TRP or something like that. It's like Hal, yeah. It's kind of like Cosmo Air Light in that it's like a shiny texture. The way I describe Cosmo Air Light is sort of in a shiny, smooth, squeaky kind of way. And it's not that I don't like it, it's that I prefer it for art more than writing purposes. But to each their own, really. I know people who love that kind of paper, so if it's like Hal, I don't like Hal already. Yeah. Well, Cosmo Air Light is like a particular kind of paper, I think. So if you're into that kind of shiny, like smooth, it's great for reflecting like vibrant colors, I find, though. And so for that, it's really good. It's that it sort of shows certain aspects or properties of inks or, paints or things like that you might use. But yeah, in general, it's sort of one of those things like you either like it for writing or for like creative purposes or you don't. And that's where our texture preferences and the kind of papers that we like for, certain uses come into play. It's like if you don't like the feel and the sound the paper might make when you're writing on it or drawing on it, then that might be a thing. I'm fine with paper being smooth. It's too sensitive to hand oil. Yeah. Oh, of course. If you prefer it, that's what you prefer. Okay, so what I wanted to do today, again, as I mentioned, was I want to do some planning and journaling. And we are going to do some drawing and take out some stationery and stuff. So if you were here last Monday, It will be similar in that I am going to sort of use my Hemlock and Oak weekly and daily planner. This is kind of my home base for memory keeping and creative journaling, like drawing, arts, that kind of thing. It was gifted to me by Hemlock and Oak. They are a Canadian company, and they offered to send me one to try out the paper because it is specially formulated for Hemlock and Oak this year. It's a new kind of paper called Archivist, and it is 70 GSM. Let me double check. I always second guess that, but it's 70 GSM paper, and it's fountain pen friendly. And I've actually found it really good for handling inks, paints, that kind of thing. So I've been using it every week, just, for different things. And we're going to kind of do that together. So in this weekly daily planner, if you're not aware or if you're not familiar with Hemlock and Oak planners, you can get dated or undated, and this one's an undated one. The weekly and daily means that it has all of the pages you'll need for the full year, and that's why it looks like a textbook. But it's also more compact and thinner than their other the other sort of similar planners like this that use their regular 120, I think it is GSM paper, which obviously makes it really bulky. And so they've tried it with this kind of paper, which makes it a little bit more, portable. I wouldn't say portable. I mean, it's more like a desk planner, but it makes it, not as hefty. Maybe that's the thing. So the way the undated is set up is you have quarterly pages in the front. Then you have all of the monthly pages, again undated, all of the weekly pages. This one is a vertical layout for the weeks, and then all of the daily pages in the back. So because it's undated, you have essentially enough pages for a full year if you're going to do daily planning and journaling. But because it's undated, you can use however much you want to. So the way I'm using this planner is mainly for memory keeping. So what we've been doing on my stream is every week, I guess it's been 2-3 weeks. So what I do is I just go in, do some memory keeping, decorate the pages a little bit, and then we move into the daily section. And I've just been doing some drawing and journaling based on prompts and references. So as I get into it, I'll explain it a little bit more. But I've been kind of enjoying doing this sort of in this way because it's a little bit different. I haven't done this last year. Like, this is sort of my first year using daily pages for drawing practice, especially when it's like based on reference photos. So last year I did drawing every day, but it was just abstract stuff. So this year I'm using references and I'm using books, and I've kind of committed to it. But as you can see, or as I'll point out, my last daily entry was January 12th. So that was last Monday. So I haven't picked up this book in a week. And it's just, the sign of how busy things can get. But we'll do it today, and we'll do it together, and I'll sort of walk you through the process of doing some drawing, adding color, and we'll draw some flowers together. But I will tell you, or I'll update you on how the weekly looks a little bit different. So last week we did this together. I did this on my stream, and what I basically did was I reviewed or reflected on the previous, or I looked at my daily logs for the week, and then I just picked out like highlights per day that I wanted to include in my memory keeper, which is this book. And then I picked out some stickers that sort of fell in line with the theme of the highlight. So if it was event-based, a sticker that sort of spoke to the event, or something that was in line with that. So I picked out some stickers, threw them in here, used a Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen to do the hand lettering. So it's this brush pen, one of my favorite brush pens, by the way. So if you are hand lettering headers or highlights or something like that you want to stand out, this is my go-to pen. But that's what I used here, and then I used just a mono drawing pen, like fine liner, to add in some of the details of the events. I will say I did not like the spread. I did not like what it looked like. I thought the colors were kind of like, there was yellow that stood out too much. I felt like the column was a little bit too, it was too short, or, it didn't give me enough space to kind of hand letter the way I wanted to. And I felt like you could sort of see how things were kind of pushed together, or I had to move them down the line. I just didn't like how this turned out. So the stickers are fine. This is how I did memory keeping last year in a Hobonichi Weeks. And I think the difference is obviously the Hobonichi Weeks has, a little bit more horizontal space, even though the book itself is smaller. But at least, with each day you kind of had a longer sort of space to write horizontally. And I felt like trying to condense all the lettering and all the writing and stuff in a column just felt like too much. And essentially I looked at this and I thought, I don't want to do any more spreads like this. I don't want to go another week to doing this. So last night I took out my book and I thought, you know what? I want to change the way it looks. I like the information that I'm putting here. I like that I'm using it for memory keeping, and highlights that if I were to just kind of look back on the weekly spread, I can pull out things that stood out to me. So I like the concept behind it. And, it's sort of a continuation of what I've been doing in previous years. But I think the application of that concept needed to change. So that's why for the last week, this spread looks so much different and looks way better to me. So personally, I love this kind of layout. It's minimal-ish with just a few sort of aesthetic pieces that, give it a little bit of color. I like the colors that I use. The palette is kind of simple, but also, not too bright. And then I used stamps. So I have a lot of stamps, like rubber stamps, acrylic stamps, etc. And I use these to kind of add in little sort of things that kind of stand out. So a little bit of detail, a little bit of interest to the spreads. And then instead of using cutesy stickers, kawaii theme, which I love because most of them are the Coffee Monsters Co. and I love Helen's art. But instead I pivoted to using washi tapes, just general kind of washi, details and ephemera, that kind of look. And so I just picked out a few to throw in here. And then instead of using a brush pen, which I just found like I had to force myself to make it fit in the columns. Instead of that, I decided to just go with my handy sort of, this is what I like using in my journals is fountain pens. So I just went with a fountain pen. And so I used the Leonardo Momento Zero. But the great thing or the cool thing about this fountain pen is that when I'm writing on the correct side, it's this sort of fine point. And then on the reverse, if I flip the pen over, it's an architect grind. So it's a reverse architect nib. And so on the reverse, it gives me this sort of chunky broad line across and thin line down. And so I use that sort of to change how things are portrayed or how things sort of look on the page. And I like this so much better. So I'm going to continue this sort of the way I did this into at least, this week's memory keeping and see how I feel about it. But let this be a reminder to you as well. If you do it if you sort of, open up your journal and you do a spread a certain way because you've been doing it like that all, for the past, but something about it just kind of doesn't register with you or it doesn't bring you joy, let this be sort of a prompt to change it up if you want to. And don't feel bad about it. Yeah, it looks so different, right? Like, it's such a contrast to how the pages look. But I feel so much happier about how it turned out that now I'm looking forward to opening up this book and doing a week's worth of memory keeping, knowing that if it looks something like this, then I'll be happy. So I just wasn't finding any kind of joy in writing things in these columns and trying to make things fit, and it just felt like a lot. And this felt so much calmer and so much more sort of peaceful. And I also sort of cut down on the amount of highlights I was putting in because I think part of me just wanted to pare this down to the things that really do make the week special or make the week sort of stand out in my mind. So that's what I wanted this weekly spread to look like. But don't worry, the stickers didn't go away. I also have a Hemlock and Oak grid notebook, which I had gotten because I bought it because when they announced the new paper, I thought, obviously I have to try it out, right? I have to test it. And so I got this notebook and I did test it and found that the paper is really nice. I really enjoy using it. And so I did want to use this notebook for something for this year. And I started using it the first week of January just to kind of write out my memories and what I wanted to put into my memory keeper. So it's sort of minimal. And then the second week I did the same thing and I sort of mapped out in an undated way. So I just kind of put, the dates wherever I wanted to and kind of mapped out what happened in that week so that I could reference this to create this memory keeping spread. And then I thought, you know what, I actually kind of prefer Freedom Thief. Thanks so much for the follow and welcome in. And then I thought, I kind of prefer using this notebook in this kind of layout, which is odd because it's not dated, it's not structured in any way. And so I tried it again for last week's memory keeping. But this time I used more stickers. So basically the stickers I probably would have used on this spread, I decided to use it in my notebook. And then I took out washi tape and threw sort of things on the page and used color and stuff. And I think this spread for last week in combination with this makes me happy. So I don't know how I'm sort of going to continue. I think I'll just do the same thing for this week's memories. So at the end of the week, and it's usually sort of a Sunday where I kind of sit down and I take out my stickers and stuff like that and play around with creating a spread based on the week. So I think I'll do this in this way for at least another week or so, and then this as well. And if I like it, then, we'll see. We'll see how I sort of continue. I did want to keep everything in one book in terms of memory keeping and, sort of creative art journaling and stuff. But I do have this notebook and I feel like if they're kind of working together, then I'm okay with it. So I'm not gonna fight something just because, it seems to be working. So that's my kind of spiel on how the weekly spread has changed and how I'm sort of going about it. And I'll show you how I set up sort of the bones of it on a blank weekly layout. And that's what we'll start with today. And then we'll go into the daily page and do some art. Ellie Sky, thanks so much for the follow. Spicy, you care about the writing experience? Yeah, Midorian TRP, as well as Clairefontaine, gives you a good experience. Stick with what works, right? Like, stick with what works and see what is similar to that, I think is a great way to go. Found a beginner art book that teaches you to draw flowers. Oh, awesome. Yes. You should use it to practice. Pop Out Gal, hi. Thanks for joining the club again. Thanks for the resubscribe. I can't stop using their Jetstream Edge 0.38 in the Hobonichi. It's the best ballpoint. Yeah, the Jetstream in the Hobonichi, like on their TRP, is like, I don't know, there's something about it. I totally get that. Yeah. Gel pens are good too, but even though you prefer fountain pens overall, it's hard to stop using that pen. Yeah, I get it. How's it going, G? I'm so glad you could join today, and it's a Monday. Mondays are tough for a lot of people, so I totally get it, but I do with all my stock pens, yeah. And they work in reverse, though they weren't designed for it. That's awesome. I know a few have sort of been scratchy for me, and I kind of try just for fun. But yeah, there's a few that actually do work that way too. Navalure reverse, I highly prefer to standard. Interesting. That's very interesting. I see journaling, I'm set. Well, welcome. Yeah, I haven't really started, but we are going to get started. We're going to do some journaling, some planning, some art in our books. Me too, have the day off. Oh, yes, of course. Oh, in honor of MLK. Yes, of course. I knew that. I'm glad you're using it to hang out with us for a little bit. And of course, welcome. Okay, so to set up the weekly spread, because it's undated, I just go in and add a few things just to make sure that I know it's this week. So first things first, I use a Fudenosuke brush pen. Like I said, I love hand lettering with this, and I just use it to put January here. Instead of where it has the header week of, I wish it said just month, because that's all I really need to know when I'm looking at this is like, what month is it? And then what days, what are the dates, right? So, and then for the dates, I just use an 03 mono drawing pen. It's like right in the middle of what I like. Not too fine, not too broad. Okay, so today is the 19th already. I don't know where this month is going. It's going by so fast. Okay. So we have the dates at the top, we have our month. I like that there are prompt sort of boxes set aside for different things that you might need to add in the week, especially if you're using it as a planner. So you have focus, you have intentions, and you have to do down here. But as a memory keeper, I'm not really spending too much time on these things. I think for 1 week I wrote the intentions was just to ink up my fountain pens for January. So that's cool. And then last week in the to-do column, I just put in Happy Mail. So I might continue kind of using that in that way as well. And then the bottom here, I wasn't sure what to do with this. So I just stamped note to self, and then I don't know what I'm going to write in here. So if you have any ideas, let me know. But something to sort of mark like things that happen in the week. Could be a space to journal, could be a space to kind of reflect. I don't know. So we'll see. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight when things are sort of happening in my schedule. So I like time blocking in a visual way, so that I can just kind of glance at it and see what kind of events are happening. So I do have a key for, I use the Tombow dual brush pens, and I have a key for what color equates to what, category wise, or sort of what it sort of means to me. So that way I can kind of see here too, you know, if I see a certain color throughout the week, then it means this or whatever. And that way I don't have to label it. I'm not really a huge fan of like writing down the same thing every day. Like I don't really like putting like school or work and that being sort of the highlight there for every single day. So if I use a color, then I can kind of look at it every day. And I kind of know, like school is, you know, this time, etc. Actually, today, okay. And then if there's no school or something like that, and then the absence of that color will kind of indicate to me something else might be happening during that time. So that's kind of cool. So today the girls have, my kids have yoga class after school, which is really cool. And it's at their school, so I can pick them up later, which is nice. And then green is things for me or my events. So I'm gonna do Twitch stream today and on Wednesday. So if you're around on Wednesday, this time, come hang out. We'll talk fountain pens, currently inked for January, things like that. And then tomorrow, I have a call then, and then adulting things and project things. So some upcoming workshops and projects that I'm excited for. That should be fun. And then Sunday, the girls have a gym class where they play just general sports. So that's kind of nice. And then I think that's it. One thing there. So that's kind of it. So depending on what it is and who it's sort of concerning, I use different colors, and that visually just looks a lot better to me than writing it all out and just having words everywhere, which don't mean so much as like color and visual things mean to me. So and because I'm not using this as a planner, it's not like I have to write everything down. I can just look at this in terms of looking back at the week and seeing what sort of happened during the week. So, you know, shifting that kind of how I expect to use this makes more sense to use it this way. And then when I go back for at the end of the week when I'm doing memory keeping, then I can either sort of fill in. So here I can write, you know, Twitch stream or, you know, whatever the header and the event is. Or in some cases, I just left them blank because it's like, I think this was my husband's dentist appointment. Like, I don't really need to memory keep that because I don't care. In the long run, it's not like that stood out in the week as something that I should remember or build some memory around it. So I still kind of like having it there just to sort of note that things happened in the week. Right? Like sometimes our weeks are boring or, you know, big things don't always happen. They're kind of just our routine and just, appointments and adulting things that we're doing. And even though we don't need to attach, like, oh, this happened and this is what, my memory is around it, you can still kind of acknowledge that it happened and show that, you did things that week. You had a busy week, or, events happened and appointments happened. You went places, you saw people, and not everything needs to be sort of journaled about or written out if you don't want to. Like, if it's not something you care to remember, in years to come, then just leave it. Leave it as is. So that's how I'm kind of approaching it this way. And then the other thing too is, if you're pre-planning in this way, where you're time blocking or you're using a color to sort of denote events that are happening in that week, if they get rescheduled, unless you're sort of writing in pencil, right, you can erase it and it's not a big deal. But if you're kind of writing everything in pen, I always found like crossing things out or whiting them out, or, it just, to me, visually is like, ugh, I prefer not to do that. But I have no problem is if I highlight or add color and then something gets rescheduled or canceled, I just leave it. Just like, it's fine. If there's, a color here and it didn't happen, it doesn't stand out so much as like, oh no, that was a mistake, or, it shouldn't have been there or something like that. It's just a little bit of color in the column. So really, like, if things were canceled here, I just wouldn't add it in as like a memory or something like that. But of course, there are stickers where you can, put like rescheduled or canceled sticker and make it cute. So there are options if you do it sort of if you do a pre-plan spread and things change, right, throughout the week. And as they change, you can kind of adjust too, especially if you're using a planner or you're kind of referring to this in a real-time sort of way. So there's that. But I do want to show you just some stamping stuff, and we could talk about using stamps in your journal as well. Yeah, no problem, Brooke and Becca. Come by anytime. Drop in as you feel the need to. But like I mentioned, I do like using stamps in my journals and memory keepers. And I do like rubber stamps are really fun. Acrylic stamps are really great because you can have a sheet of acrylic stamps and they're easy to sort of throw into your bag, take with you to a meetup or something like that. But these are really cute, so I kind of wanted to use these in my spread. The stamp pad that I use and prefer for journals is the Versa Magic Chalk Ink stamp pad. Because I find that this is the least sort of bleed through ink pad that I found anyways. And I've used different kinds of ink pads too, but this one's sort of like the safer one, I guess, for me. And you can get them in a ton of different colors. And they're a small size, so they're also portable. So I'm just going to put this for my streams just because they're fun. And I'll probably put note to self again, even though I'm still not sure what to write. But how I sort of thought I could do these weekly spreads in terms of decorating them is I don't like to put things in the columns or in the space where I'm going to do some writing, because if I have a sticker there and I want to sort of write around it, it kind of hinders my experience. It doesn't, I don't like doing that. So what I do for pre-decorating is I sort of use the space that I'm probably not going to use. Like, I usually don't do a lot of memory keeping or journaling if there's a timestamp. I'm not going to do it after a certain time, just because not a lot happens during that time. But if there is, like, for example, I watch something interesting, or something sort of happens in that timeline, I don't have a problem moving it up a little bit, because usually it's not time based. It's kind of like, oh, I watched this on TV or something like that. So I don't mind sort of putting it higher up in the timeline. But in terms of washi tape, I feel like there's so many different options that you can use to put some color on your page. You know, and depending on what kind of aesthetics you like, you know, there's like kawaii, like really cute stuff, or there's like, you know, this sort of aesthetic, or florals. So yeah, it sort of depends on what you like. I like these because I can sort of pick out like one to put on my page as like the what I kind of base the color scheme on for that week. And I think a few here are actually like, there's a rain one, so, or a few that are kind of like rain based, like umbrellas. There's like one that's wearing a hat. I really like them, so I think maybe we'll go with this for this week. So let's cut that out and add it in. So I just cut around. Actually, put it back in here. And because last week I kind of put the stickers on one side, let's see, this week I'm going to put it on the other side, so you can sort of alternate where you're putting stickers, just so you don't get at the end of the year like you know, a bulk or a bump where you're putting all the stickers. So we're just gonna put it on this side here. And then because I have a lot of washi tapes or like just rolls of them, what I usually do is either I cut them out and I just throw them in here, especially if it's like, you know, someone gifted me a little bit of washi tape. I can fussy cut them or cut them out into manageable pieces and I throw them in there, or I cut them and I put them into these sticker release inserts from Traveler's Company, and that way they're ready to go. So, you know, if you're kind of doing a journal spread, and I use this for when I do like trip memory keeping. So after a vacation or a trip, I usually print out photos and do some journaling around it. And then I just take out these books and pick out a few stickers or washi tape pieces that I like. And it's super, super easy. You just grab it from here and just add it to your spread. So a lot of times too, it's easier to see like all the different kinds of washi tape you might have, because they're kind of in, you know, in a book. Whereas if you have rolls of them, it's like you have to take them all out to look at them. So I kind of like this color scheme. So I think we're going to go with that. We're going to do that. And then I'm going to add a floral element. I have my flowers somewhere in here in the back. And I have flowers in here too. These are really nice. And a lot of times when you get washi tape that has like florals or botanicals or things like that, they're all just kind of concentrated on, let me see if I can find one to show you. like this. You kind of have them all like on a strip. And if you're just if you just want to use like one element or something, you kind of have to cut around it and things like that. But if you pre-cut those things, it's so much easier just to look at it and be like, yeah, I want to use this. So let's go with something like this. I'll just put it on the other side to kind of balance it out a little bit. And that's kind of it. And so as I sort of fill out this week, you can add more stickers, or kind of keep it minimal depending on your style and what you like. And then also, you know, use stamps if you have like things that say mail or something that's, you know, related to what you're journaling about. I kind of like doing that as well. So that's this week pre-filled in a little bit and decorated just a little bit. And of course you can add more if that's your style, for sure. First time seeing you live. Oh, awesome. So glad. Hi. Welcome. Yes, welcome in. I'm so glad you caught it live. And you caught the first sort of weekly spread, pre-planned weekly spread for memory keeping. And the other thing I add to this spread is if I'm going to do daily journaling, then I usually add the page at the bottom of the column or somewhere here where it sort of indicates like if there's more to that day, then you can sort of turn to that page. So for this, in this case, I'm just going to write 197 for today because we're going to do it together. So I know it's going to be done. Was it 197? Yeah. So that's for today. And hopefully during the week, I'll be able to do more daily drawing practice and a little bit of journaling. But it's okay. Things get busy sometimes. So let me just clean this up a little bit. And then I'll explain to you how I'm using the daily pages and how we're gonna do this. So for this spread, I'm going to use a few different things. Okay, I guess I'll do that. Okay, so for this spread, I'm using 2 books as reference for drawing the flowers, which I've been doing on and off since the start of the month and year. To draw the flowers, I'm using reference photos in this book called Flower Color Guide by Taylor and Michael Putnam. And I love this book because it's kind of like a coffee table book where you just kind of flip through and there are photos and photos of all kinds of different flowers, leaves, botanicals, and they are sectioned by color. So it's, you know, it's very pleasing to see them in sort of this rainbow color fashion. But it's very cool. So, you know, you can sort of flip through it, pick out a flower or something like that. If you're wanting to practice drawing flowers or sort of natural or, you know, natural sort of botanicals. And you can draw them separately, or you can use this as reference for if you're drawing a bouquet or you just kind of want to practice. Like, this is really good for just practicing like line work, and natural sort of lines that you see in nature, right? So it's kind of interesting that way. And then it's also cool to see like the different color palettes and color schemes and things that sort of work together. But you know, regardless, it's a really interesting book. It's really cool, and I'm using it for drawing practice. Basically, just picking out a page and then drawing the flowers. And then after I draw the flowers, I'm going through this book called The Pivot Year by Brianna Wiest, and it's if you're not familiar with this book, it's 365 days, basically prompts to sort of think about where you are in life, what kind of like what you want to sort of get out of the year. If you have personal goals or you have a mission that you sort of want to accomplish this year, this is a great book to sort of every day. There's just a passage. Some are really short, some are a little bit longer, but it's meant to sort of get you to reflect and think introspectively about, different things, different aspects of your journey through the year. So what I kind of like about it is not just the style of writing. I really think that she's a great writer, and I kind of love the way that she it's like motivating, encouraging. It's kind of just nice to read. But also I feel like it's a great sort of way to get a prompt for the day. So you can, of course, go online and find different prompts, yearly prompts, things to think about, stuff like that. Let me just find a place to put this. Things like that. Or, use a book or something like that. So I already had this book. I've been trying to get through it for the past couple of years, but it's one of those things where, it's not something you just sit and like read from cover to cover. It's just meant to be sort of thought starters for the day. And without committing to it, I've had a hard time kind of going through it. So this year I'm committing to using it as prompts for my daily journal. And so every day I just sort of, when I get to open this, I'm trying to do it every day, but I can't do it every day. But every day that I can open this book, I just hand letter or write down one or two sentences from the passage of the day, and then do a little bit of journaling or think about it and just write down what sort of comes to mind after reading that passage. So that's how I'm filling the space around it. So 2 books, sort of 2 ways of referencing something, one for drawing, one for journaling. And so we're going to do it together. So the first thing I'm going to do is do our drawing our flowers. So I love this. I'm so glad. Yay. I'm glad you like it. The first thing is picking out a flower, and I've been just kind of doing it randomly. But then I also thought I do want to sort of go with different color schemes as well. So I'm not sort of sticking to one kind of color palette or one kind of color. So I don't want to do too much white, but I wouldn't mind doing something where it's like pink and something else, or 2 different types of colors. This might be kind of nice. The French tulip. Maybe let's do that, because then we get some yellow in here as well, and sort of bright colors, yellow and red. Yeah, let's do that for today. So I have my reference, and the other supplies I'm using is I'm going to use Tombow dual brush pens, and I'm going to show you how to get this sort of soft watercolor effect, kind of like this, sort of like this. So you're using them in a muted way, and I find that really interesting and really fun to explore. So that's what I've been doing. And to do that, I use colorless blenders. So these are dual brush pens that don't have a color to them, but they pick up any color that you want, and you can use them in the way that you would use the markers. And in order to transfer color from a dual brush pen to the colorless blender, the easy way of doing it is using a blending palette. There are other ways. You can directly touch a tip of your marker to this tip. But to get this effect, I'm using the blending palette. And it's literally like a laminated sheet specifically done for transferring dual brush pen colors. But on the other side, I like it because it has a reference of all of the dual brush markers the Tombow has, all 108 of them. So this is really handy for figuring out what colors I want to play around with. So if I'm looking at this, I want to use obviously like a bright yellow and like an orangey red. That's not too dark. And then of course I want a green for the leaves and the stem. So I've been kind of picking out 3 or 4 colors because with a colorless blender you can blend. So you're not stuck to those specific colors. You can kind of blend them in a little bit as well and play around with them. So I'm going to choose probably this or this as the yellow, 025, and then a fun green. So maybe those two. And then a red that's kind of like that. Maybe like a 905. Okay, so let's find these markers. Okay, we're just gonna go with all bright colors today. So we have a yellow, we have a green, and then we have an orange and a red. So I think that might be kind of fun to blend with. So let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the color to the blending palette. So you literally draw on top of this, and once you have it on here, you can add water, you can use it with this colorless blender, you can pick it up and transfer it to paper as you sort of like. So this way, I'm not coloring directly on the paper, because what ends up happening sometimes is, depending on your paper, of course, but if it's like a thin paper, if it's a thin paper and you're drawing with marker and you're drawing on top, like if you're layering marker colors, what could end up happening obviously is it soaks through the paper and it could like pull up paper fibers. Or, you know, it sort of starts bleeding through, ghosting, that kind of thing. You start to feel a little bit of the texture of the paper. But if you do want to mix colors together and sort of blend different colors, where you're like, oh, you know, I want a lighter shade of this specific color. A great way of getting that is by using a colorless blender. So the way the colorless blender works is there's no color, right? So what you do is after you add your colors to the blending palette, you can then pick up those colors with this marker. So I'm going to start with yellow. So I'm going to do the flowers first and then add the stem and the leaves. And I'm probably just going to do 3. Maybe I'll just do these 3 instead of this long one. Maybe I'll do these 3. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do these 3 and we'll kind of take up this space. So what you do is you just color on top and then you'll see that the color transfers to your blender. And then you start coloring on the paper and it just transfers directly onto the paper. But it does it in a soft way where it's not like a direct, you can of course color with your marker on top of the paper. But when you're doing it this way, you're getting like, I think to me, it sort of looks like a watercolor effect, where it looks like if I was using a paintbrush and using some water, this is what it would look like. So you can see when I first sort of pick up that color and start coloring on the paper, it's a little bit more dark, it's saturated, you're directly transferring color. But then after a little while, you'll see it's sort of a muted version of that, right? As it's sort of fading off of the blender. And you can continue adding color, or you can sort of continue coloring with the colorless blender, and it just gets rid of the color from your tip. And so if you keep coloring, that yellow will just naturally move off of the tip and onto your paper, and it's self-cleaning itself. Self-cleaning. So once you're done with that color, you can move on to another one, and just, make sure you don't have that color on there unless you want to keep it on, and then just kind of do a little bit of blending. But then you can go to your second color, whatever it is, and then layer on top. So I'm just going to add a little bit here. And while I'm using this as my reference, this photo as my reference, I also don't want to do, I'm not expecting myself to do exactly this, because it would take way too long and put way too much pressure on me. And I just want to have fun with this. So I just want to sort of focus on the process and play a little bit with color and see what will come out of this. And I don't need it to look exactly like this to, experiment or explore drawing the French tulip. And if you have a different color, you can layer in the different color as well, wherever you kind of need it to be. So I kind of want to just add it throughout the flower a little bit, I think. I think these two colors are pretty similar to each other, which is fine. So now that I have those colors in here, and I can get rid of this color and reuse it for the green, or you can use a different marker like I will, just in case I need to come back to this flower. So the other thing too, you can either, move on, or if you're kind of looking at this and you're like, I do want a little bit more saturated color in here. What you can do is just take your marker and add a little bit of color. But you'll see as soon as I start coloring indirectly on the paper, it's a lot darker, right? Like now all of a sudden you're using the saturation of the actual marker. And I don't want to do too much of that because I want to keep that sort of watercolor look. But I think adding a little bit more color can just make it stand out a little bit. So now we have the green, and with this too, you can use a colorless blender if you want to get kind of the soft the softer version of this color. And then go over it with your marker afterwards. So we're going to have a leaf here. And because it's a brush pen, you can push gently on it, on the tip, to get more coverage. Just like you would if you were coloring with the brush marker directly. I think a darker green also would be nice here, but I can add that in. So let's see. And because it's dual tip, you have a brush tip on one side and you have sort of a bullet tip, I guess, on the other side, a finer tip. So you can use that as well to add a little bit of color or a little structure if you need to. Like that. And I do want to add a darker green, so let's see. Maybe 126. Let's see. This is like an olive color, which is nice. So let's add that. Yeah. This is nice because it's just like a little bit darker than the color we added before. So it's kind of nice to add a little bit more depth. And then this too, we can add a little bit more color. Throughout. So. Oh yeah, these two are actually pretty similar. Just one is a lot lighter and brighter, but they go well together, so that's good. So the other thing I want to do is swatch the colors. So I'm just doing that on the side. Okay. Yellow, do that here. All right. Okay, so that's the first part of this drawing. Then the second part to how I sort of draw flowers is those turned out great. Yeah, I mean, we'll see when we're completely done what it looks like. But for the second part of this, I usually just go in with a fine liner and I add a little bit of detail. And it's usually just quick line work, and it's just meant to sort of show us the shapes and the outline of what we're looking at. So For that, I'm using the 005, which is the finest of fine point from Tombow. And it's great because the line is so thin that it just gives a little bit of detail without overpowering the color that's on the page or what we sort of drew in or colored. And that way it's not like stark black on the page. So that's why I like using this point. And I'm just going to look at this reference and pick out the general shape and where I sort of see those lines and try and mimic or transfer what I'm seeing on the page. And again, I don't want it to look so detailed or lifelike because this is just my interpretation of what I'm seeing, and kind of like playing with the white space too to make the flower look a little bit bigger than it might be. We have the second flower here. It's interesting because the petals are they sort of have jagged edges and they kind of fold in and out. And that's really interesting to draw. The reason why I like practicing when I can to draw based on a reference or real life is because it gets me practicing those lines of what those flowers might look like or do look like and how I sort of interpret it, so that when I do my abstract floral art, I'm just basing it on muscle memory and what my mind can kind of pull out from previously seeing these types of flowers. So if I'm drawing them from reference and I'm practicing the lines, then it's more likely that I'll remember these types of lines and pull them out when I'm actually drawing this as an abstract piece. Not that it would look like this, but that's okay too. It's really nice because the red sort of stands out here as like different shapes. Like you can kind of see like this long kind of heart shape here. So that's really interesting. Yeah, I like that. So that's kind of it. I don't want to spend too much time on this again because then I'll overdraw. I'll put too much in here. But for the palette, I just write down the marker numbers so I can reference it later if I need to. Because I won't remember these marker numbers off the top of my head. So, and I kind of like the look of this palette where you have all the colors here. I also find that just naturally I tend to pick out some of the same, like already I see from last week when I did this, I picked the same green here, 126. So it's just something that sort of draws me to this olive green in like a natural setting is really interesting. So that's the other thing too. If you know what kind of supplies you're using, the colors you're sort of using or that you're drawn to, it's very interesting to document that because you can always, in the future, if you are going to do something like this, you can always pick out the same kind of colors knowing that, you know, you've used it before and you feel comfortable with it. And visually it feels appealing to you. So that's another sort of reference point here. And Then I'm going to date this. Oh, after I do that. So this again is the Fudenosuke brush pen. It's a hard tip, so it's very easy to control, and you can get those broad downstrokes and very light upstrokes if you want to. The other thing is I'm going to write down the flower, because obviously I want to kind of remember the flowers that I'm drawing. Actually, maybe I'll write it down here. So this is the French tulip. And it's called Flaming Parrot. That's probably why the colors are so bright, like fire. I definitely prefer to have a reference when I'm drawing still. Yeah, I hear you on that. It feels comfortable. It just feels like you have something to fall back on, right? And that's how I started drawing flowers in the first place, is by looking at references and bouquets and things like that, where it's like I can trust what I'm seeing and just need to sort of capture it on paper. So it's fun too. It's fun that way. All right, so I'm happy with this. I like how the colors sort of play together. It's very nice. And what I also like is that it is different from what I drew last, so that I'm continuously changing what I'm drawing, how I'm drawing it, the line work. So it doesn't look the same over and over, which is sometimes with abstract work, I find that I tend to sort of draw the same kind of shapes just because I do it over and over, so it feels comfortable, it comes naturally. But when I'm looking at a reference photo and I'm trying to mimic or sort of look at, try and capture what I'm seeing onto paper, I'm paying more attention to, you know, the kind of shapes that I'm seeing. So it's a little bit different in that way. And I enjoy that part as well, because these are not lines that I might draw when I'm just drawing from memory or when I'm doing abstract drawings. I'm actually looking at what I'm seeing and trying to capture that. So it's kind of nice that way. It's different. It's different. They're so vibrant and beautiful. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a nice sort of, you know, contrast to drawing like muted things and wintry flowers. I don't know. Wintry colors. Okay, so the second part of it is just adding a little bit of words, adding a little wording to it, just to fill up the space. So of course, you know, if you're doing something similar in your journal, or you want to sort of fill up a page with color, you know, draw something, you can always leave it like this, or you can use that space for your regular journaling or planning or whatever you want to sort of add in that space. But for me, because I'm not using this as a planner or a memory keeper of the day, I am just using it for art practice and writing from a prompt. So that's what I'm going to do. So we're on to day 72. Still getting through it. So I'm just going to add the title. And day 72 is actually not that long. It's pretty short. If you feel like you need to be where you are for a little while longer, you're probably right. If you feel like there's more to release, there probably is. If you think you're on the precipice of the breakthrough, you probably are. Just because you can't see the end yet or understand how it will all come together does not mean that you aren't still exactly where you are meant to be. Very nice. Very encouraging. And I like that. So I'm just going to pick out a sentence or two that I'm going to write out with my fountain pen so you can watch the fountain pen in action. Microdose, my kitty has been sitting in front of the TV watching your stream. Oh, yeah, send me a photo. Kitty, so cute. I love that. Like, wait, flowers. So good. I also have crows flying outside of my windows. So it's a little distracting at times too. So I don't know what they're doing, but anyways. So I'm just going to write this last sentence. Just because you can't see the end yet or understand how it will all come together does not mean that you aren't still exactly where you are meant to be. And I'm going to write it out with the architect side of this nib. And so I'll show you how you can sort of, how you can vary your writing, you know, based on, like if you're using a fountain pen, based on the nib. But also before I was using, like for the previous days, I was using a brush pen to write out the phrase, and then using the TCMC, the Coffee Monsters Co. and Esterbrook Esty with the journaler nib, which is fine. I love that pen. It writes nice, but then I thought, instead of using a brush pen, I think I want to try just using the fountain pen for the whole entry, just so I'm not, you know, flipping back and forth from different types of pens and different tools. I can just use a fountain pen for the entry. So if I'm using the architect side, it's the reverse, because this is a reverse architect nib, and I like using it for block lettering. Which is kind of nice if you want it to stand out, right? Because it will look different than the other side of the nib, or like if you're using a varying line. So I don't use the architect nib often, just because I don't write in block letters normally, like in my everyday sort of writing. But when I can, I'm writing a header, or if I just want something to sort of stand out in my writing, then using an architect nib or something similar is useful. So if you do have an architect nib or stub or a brush pen and you don't know how you would use it on a daily basis, it's great to pull out, you know, a quote or something that stood out for the day, or a prompt, and write it out at the top of your journal entry, or a place where it sort of stands out for you. Just because you can't see the end yet or understand how it all come together, it does not mean that you So that's the prompt. Thanks for following, Ms. And welcome in. I hope you're having a good Monday. So that is the architect side of the nib. And I'll just show you a close-up of what it looks like. Right, and the contrast between the architect side and the regular side is really, really nice. It almost looks like you're using two different pens, but they're inked with the same ink. I like that look. Also, the other reason why I switched from using a brush pen, so you can see it was kind of nice because with a brush pen, what you can do, I'm just gonna put this here. With a brush pen, what you can do is you can, or that was my initial plan anyways, is to hand letter certain words or part of that phrase that really stood out for me or that I want to draw attention to, slightly bigger and a little bit more sort of with flair. So make it stand out even more, right? Like writing something with a brush pen already is going to make it stand out because you're having those different line variations. And you can play with hand lettering in that way. But also if there are certain words that you want to draw attention to, you can use it in that way as well. So it's not to say that, you know, it doesn't look good or you can't use it in that way or something like that. It's still very easy to sort of hand letter a whole sentence. It's just I was having a little bit of I couldn't figure out the spacing that I wanted to do between the lines, I guess. So where in some places I wrote very condensed, so that the whole passage would stick together or would be in a space together. Having a little bit of line space in between just made it stand out in a different way. It just gave it a different look, I guess. And I wasn't sure if I liked it. And then I tried again to sort of condense and stick closely to each line. And then I didn't really like that either. So all to say, experiment, explore, try it out in different ways. Really, it's not like, I don't look back on, you know, these passages as like, I don't like what they look like or I don't regret anything. But what I would regret is not trying to see if I like the look of it. So that's kind of why I decided to do it a different way for today and see if I liked it better or if it just stands out in a different way. So I think I might continue doing this. And I also like the ink color. I was using black here with, this is sort of a mauvey, kind of a purple brown color. And it just, maybe it didn't look the way I wanted to together. So if you're sticking with, you know, a black brush pen and then black ink, it's fine, I guess. But for me, I kind of wanted to keep it consistent and make it look a little bit more consistent. And I think brown to me is kind of a nice color to journal with. It's not too stark. It doesn't stand out too much. It looks really good on the page. So for this this piece, I usually just write down like different things that come to mind when I read this. So I'll write a little bit, I guess, just so we can see. I do want to see the contrast between, like, you have the architect bold font or handwriting at the top, and then using the finer line to add your own thoughts or, you know, journaling reflections, I guess. So I just usually, with prompts, I like to give it a little bit of thought, and then I like to just do like stream of consciousness type of, like, just whatever comes to mind without filtering it too much, because then you're just writing your own journaling, you know, your own journaling phrase or whatever. But if you're basing it on a prompt, the best time to write down your thoughts is basically as soon as you read something, what comes to mind? Like, what is it triggering in your mind in terms of the reflection that's coming up? Like, is it something that you think about for yourself, or is it just kind of a general, like, you agree with it, you disagree with it, or would you rephrase it in some way? And that's kind of the best time to write these things down, is to think about it a little bit, but don't overthink it, because usually the first thing that comes to mind, the first few things that come to mind are probably the most accurate to what you actually think about that. And that's fine. It's your perspective, right? So it's kind of nice to have that on paper. So I don't know what I wrote. I just wrote a bunch of words, but it's kind of nice to write with a fountain pen. It's kind of nice to write with a nib that actually writes really nicely. And it's very, very fun and an enjoyable writing experience. So so you can see the contrast between one nib just by using the reverse architect and the correct side, and both sides are very fun to write with, and give that kind of contrast to if you're using a quote or a prompt or something, to make something stand out. You can use different ink colors. You can, if you are a fountain pen user, you can use different types of nibs, right? You can grab your stub nib or something like that to write out the quote or the prompt. And then your preferred nib size for the journal entry, or ballpoint, or etc. So so that's kind of it. That was my plan for how I want to use the daily pages in this book, especially because the paper, and I'll show you the other side of this. The paper handles markers and inks really, really well, so that you don't have, a bunch of ghosting or bleed through or something like that. And for that reason, I wanted to explore using the dual brush pens, these Tombow markers, and the Colorless blender. So if that's something you haven't tried, last year I didn't really use this on a daily basis. I just kind of played around with it, but this year I thought, what an interesting and different way of making the most out of brush markers that probably a lot of us own, right? So you can color with them. You can use them to highlight, like I did in my weekly spread. You can use them for color blocking and hand lettering. There's so many different ways of using these dual brush markers. But I find it exciting to mix and match different colors, to blend them, and to use it in a way that makes sense for me. And for me, it's, practicing drawing flowers and botanicals, because that's just something I'm drawn to, and it comes a little bit more naturally to me than drawing, other things. And for you, it might be like drawing your meal of the day or something you saw, or just doodle, right? But using your stationery supplies in different ways and making the most of, what we have. And using something like a blending palette that I don't think a lot of people have tried or feel comfortable using. So if I can kind of, show you easy ways to use it and to make it an art practice or a creative practice for you, then I'm very happy to do that. And of course, you're keeping me company while I do this. So it's a way for me to check in and make sure that I'm practicing as well, and that I'm doing it on a daily basis too. I may have a Tombow or two, yeah, just a few hanging out, which I'm sure you use in the ways that you feel comfortable using. But push yourself a little bit and have some fun. And yeah, I'm more than happy to show you different ways of using them and trying them out in different ways and stuff, and exploring and experimenting. If something doesn't work or something is not pleasing or doesn't bring you a lot of joy, then change it up a little bit. Use different tools, make it look different if you have to. And we keep moving on. I enjoy watching you use a blending palette. Yeah, I've tried to use them in that way. Yes, I know. It is interesting and fun. And really mess-free, right? Like, Pop Out Gal, you join me on my painting streams, and it's literally like, putting ink into a palette and then having to clean that off and stuff like that. But if you're using something like dual brush markers, and you have a blending palette or sort of a laminated shiny sheet or something like that, where you can transfer marker colors, this you just wash off, like it's or wipe it off, and it's ready to go. Same with the colorless blenders. You just, if you want the color to come off, just keep drawing on the blending palette, or you put a little bit of water on it if it's kind of a stubborn dark color. But it will self-clean itself. So the more you use it, the more the color will just be removed from the felt tip. So you're good to go. And then the rest are kind of, if you have a fine liner or something like that to draw details, you could do it with a fountain pen if you want to. But it's a very, mess-free or less mess way of creating the sort of watercolor effect, right? Like the soft colors. And and just using your supplies in creative ways and different ways. And the paper holds up to it. So I don't feel too anxious about going at it with like layers of color and stuff like that. So it's just a different way if you don't want to use, fountain pen inks to paint with, or watercolor paints, which, obviously you're using a lot more water that way. This is kind of an easier / less of an extreme way of adding that watercolor look to your page. So it's been fun. I've had so much fun doing this on the stream. So thank you so much for joining and for keeping me company. And again, like I said, I'll stream on Wednesday and we'll do currently inked fountain pens. So if you're curious, or, if you're able to join then, I'll see you then. And then also for memory keeping, I might do this on stream next Monday, or I might do it on the weekend if I just want to sort of wrap my head around what I want the spread to look like. But next Monday, I should be back to do this sort of thing, planning, journaling, drawing, So yeah, join me again. But yeah, friends, if I see you on Wednesday, then I'll see you then. If not, I'll see you in other streams. And have a great rest of your week. Regardless, take out your stationery, have some fun. Find joy in your process of planning or journaling or whatever analog books that you use. Find ways to practice creativity and go play with your stationery. So I'll see you next time. I appreciate you so much, friends. Thanks for joining, or if you're watching the replay, thanks again. Okay, have a good one. Bye.